The late afternoon sun cast golden rays over the busy streets of Los Angeles, stretching long shadows across the sidewalk. Outside a small coffee shop on Sunset Boulevard, Melania Trump sat alone at a corner table, stirring her tea with slow, deliberate movements. Dressed elegantly in a beige cashmere coat and oversized sunglasses, she exuded the quiet poise of someone used to being watched. She enjoyed moments like these, just observing the world go by, escaping the weight of expectations, and letting the city's hum replace the noise in her own head. But peace is rarely uninterrupted. Across the street, a small boy, no older than 10, stood watching her carefully. He looked out of place, not just because of his worn-out sneakers or the oversized hoodie that nearly swallowed his small frame, but because of the way he hesitated, like he was gathering the courage to step forward. He clutched a Spider-Man backpack, its zipper barely holding together, and took a deep breath before crossing the street toward her table. His steps were slow, cautious, as if he were approaching something far bigger than just a woman sipping tea. Stopping a few feet away, the boy shifted nervously, his fingers tightening around the straps of his backpack. His light brown hair was messy, his face streaked with a little dirt, but his eyes carried something deeper. Uncertainty, hope, maybe even desperation. Melania, sensing his presence, looked up from her tea. Her gaze behind the dark lenses of her sunglasses was unreadable, but she said nothing, waiting for him to speak first. Finally, the boy licked his dry lips and said in a small but steady voice, "Miss, do you think God still listens to people like me?" The question cut through the afternoon air like a knife, silencing everything else. The distant conversations of café patrons, the hum of passing cars, even the clinking of silverware inside. Melania froze mid-stir. The silver spoon rested against the porcelain cup, unmoving. She turned her head slightly, studying the boy with careful attention. This wasn't a question you asked a stranger for no reason. It wasn't a question you asked unless you were really, really searching for something big. After a moment, she finally placed her spoon down and, in her characteristic soft but firm voice, responded, "Why would you think he doesn't?" The boy shrugged, his fingers twisting the strap of his backpack. He didn't answer right away. But Melania didn't press him. She simply leaned back slightly, waiting, because some questions deserved time. Finally, the boy mumbled, "Because I don't think I deserve it." Her expression softened behind the shield of her sunglasses. She had heard those words before, and she knew this conversation was going to be far more important than her tea. Melania Trump studied the boy carefully, her fingers gently resting on the rim of her teacup. His words, "I don't think I deserve it," hung in the air like a quiet confession. She took a slow breath, lowering her sunglasses slightly to look at him directly. "Why do you think that?" she asked, her voice soft but unwavering. The boy shifted uncomfortably, his small fingers gripping the worn-out straps of his backpack. He glanced around nervously, as if afraid that someone might overhear, but eventually he sighed and sat down across from her. His feet barely touched the ground. "I just do," he muttered, his eyes focused on the table. "I mess things up. People get mad. Then they leave. That's just how it is." Melania's expression didn't change, but inside, something stirred. She had met people who believed that before, people who had convinced themselves that mistakes made them unworthy of love, of kindness, of a second chance. But she didn't believe that. She folded her hands neatly on the table, watching the boy as if she were examining a puzzle with missing pieces. "Who told you that?" she asked. The boy shrugged, eyes darting away. "No one had to." A beat of silence passed between them. Melania exhaled softly and looked toward the street, watching cars glide past. Then her gaze returned to him, her tone calm but deliberate. "You know," she started, "people once said things about me, too. That I was just a model, that I didn't deserve the life I built, that I wasn't smart enough, strong enough, good enough." The boy's brows knitted together. He looked up at her, surprised. "You?" She nodded, her lips pressing into a thin smile. Yes, me. His fingers loosened slightly around his backpack. He didn't say anything, but the way he tilted his head told her he was listening. She leaned forward just a little, her voice steady but kind. Let me tell you something I've learned. People will always have opinions. They will always try to tell you who you are and what you're worth. But they don't get to decide that. Only you do. The boy swallowed, his throat moving with effort. But what if I already ruined my chance? He asked, barely above a whisper. Melania's eyes softened. There is no such thing, she said simply. No one is too far gone, no one is too broken, and no one is too lost to be found. The boy's fingers twitched as if he wanted to believe her, but old wounds don't heal in a moment. He leaned back in his chair, his small shoulders tensed. The boy sat in silence, his small fingers gripping the frayed strap of his backpack. His mind fought against Melania's words, yet a part of him, one he barely recognized, wanted to believe her. Melania watched him carefully, sensing the battle happening within him. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, elegant notepad. With practiced ease, she wrote something down and slid the piece of paper across the table. Here, she said, her voice gentle but firm. This is the name of a shelter not far from here. They help kids like you, give them a place to stay, food, a fresh start. The boy hesitated before picking up the paper. He stared at the words, his lips moving slightly as if reading them in his head. I don't know, he murmured. What if they don't want me? Melania's expression didn't waver. They will, she said simply. And if you ever need someone to talk to... She flipped the paper over and scribbled another number. You can call me. The boy's head snapped up, eyes wide with disbelief. You'd really answer. Of course, Melania replied without hesitation. Because someone once believed in me when I needed it the most. And now, it's my turn. The boy's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. He wasn't used to people following through on their promises. But something about the way she said it, steady, certain, without an ounce of doubt, made him want to trust her. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine it, a place to sleep without fear, a warm meal, maybe even someone who cared whether he was okay. He clutched the paper tightly, as if it might slip away at any second. Okay, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I'll go. Melania offered a small smile. Good, she said. One step at a time. That's all you need to do. The boy stood slowly, his movements uncertain but deliberate. He glanced at Melania one last time, as if memorizing her face, then turned toward the street. As he walked away, the crowd that had gathered around them parted, letting him through. People watched him go, their faces reflecting the weight of what they had just witnessed. Melania sighed softly, watching until the boy disappeared down the sidewalk. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy for him, but for the first time, he had hope. And sometimes, hope was enough to spark real change. An older woman from the small crowd stepped forward, her eyes glistening. That was beautiful, she said quietly. You gave him something real today. Melania turned to her, offering a small nod. Sometimes people just need to know they're not invisible, she said. The woman smiled, wiping a tear from her cheek. I think you reminded all of us of that today. As the last of the onlookers drifted away, Melania took one final sip of her now cold tea. She set the cup down and rose from her seat, slipping her sunglasses back on. The world around her moved on, but something about this moment felt different. Because sometimes, the smallest act of kindness could change a life forever. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more stories of kindness, hope, and the power of human connection. Because in the end, we all have the power to make a difference, one person at a time.